everyone? Matt Williamson here at Williamson NFL. Give me a follow. Go check out my YouTube page, all that good stuff. I'm recording this Monday evening before Monday Night Football. And as I often tell you guys, my tune will sometimes and almost always change after a Steelers loss from the podcast immediately following the game until this one 24 hours that I record. And I've said this on the air a few times that my Steeler colleagues, Mike Pursuta, Rob King, Max Starks, Wes, we're all guys I saw today. And we all watch the game from a different vantage point. I'm at home. Those guys are at the stadium. Rob's on the air, etc. And we always bump into each other Monday and do shows, etc. And we compare notes. What do you think of this? What do you think of that? And share thoughts, etc. And usually after those conversations, as well as doing more research and rewatching the game, I feel better about losses. And we all kind of laughed at that because I mentioned on the air in a different forum and said, yeah, I don't feel any better about this loss. Like any vantage point I look at, it's like, yep, we all saw it the same. They got crushed, and it was the worst game of the year, and it wasn't even close, and I'm not sure where things stand right now. So, as we always do, let's talk about snap counts. Steelers only snapped the ball 43 times this game. 43. I mean, that is miserable. The entire offensive line, with the exception of Isaac, played all 43. He only missed 3 snaps. DK Metcalf played 37. Aaron Rodgers he played 36. We knew he got injured. Darnell Washington, 34. 24 for Warren, 23 for Jonnu, 21 for Austin, 19 for Wilson. They're still struggling to see who should be the number 2 there. 18 for Gainwell, 17 for Freiermuth. I have a real problem with that. 13 for Spencer Anderson. So he was heavily involved yet again. And frankly, I thought he played well. I mean, that is a successful situation, the Spencer Anderson stuff. Rudolph was in there for 7. Keyshawn Williams, 5. Skoranek, 4. Caleb Johnson, 3. I didn't even realize he got in there. I'm not sure when that happened. As for the defense, in comparison, they had to play 74 snaps in this game. That is losing football, folks. Porter, Ramsey, never left the game. Duggar missed 1 snap. TJ played 61. Cam played 59, which is too many, but I thought he was one of actually the semi-bright spots as well. Highsmith played 54. Thought Highsmith played pretty well too. I mean, it's easy to forget some of these things, but they didn't run Cam and Highsmith's way very often. And when they did, those guys held their own and they rushed the passer pretty well. Again, it's hard to find bright spots. Peyton Wilson played 53. 52 for Malik Harrison. Now, I understand that he's your run stuffer and they ran all over you. But if you tell me Malik Harrison plays 52 snaps in any football game, I'm going to tell you that's a bad thing. Benton, 50, 46 for Y.A. Black. Clearly his most, and he was okay, but that's asking a lot for someone that's never played that many NFL snaps. Pierre, 38. Eccles, 34. Queen only lasted 33. We'll talk about his injury stuff probably tomorrow. Herbig, 29. I don't care how you get there, but Herbig's got to play more than 29 out of 74 snaps. He's too good a football player. That bothers me to no end. Encouraging. More on this later. But Asante Samuel, 28 snaps. Maybe you found a number 2 corner. To be determined. Otowenwo, 22 snaps. Holcomb, 16. Broderick Martin, 10. And only 8 for Jack Sawyer. And these are in my notes. But those 2 defensive tackles on Owenwo and Martin were terrible. I mean, to me, that was a direct correlation of the Harmon injury is those 2 had to play. And both were at least as bad as you thought. I guess the good way of looking at it is, well, they're not in the long-term plans. It's not like Y.A. Black was getting blown up or Benton as much as two guys that really shouldn't even probably be on the team or shouldn't be in there or should be inactive or camp bodies or whatever. But anyway, that's the snap count situation.
Football season's finally here. Time to check out the latest odds, futures, and win totals on the FanDuel Sportsbook. Think the Steelers are headed to the Super Bowl? Lock in your bets today. Whatever your game, FanDuel Sportsbook delivers the latest lines, futures, and specials so you can join in on all the action.
I know not all of you 100% understand EPA per play, and I 93% understand EPA per play. But it's basically every time you snap the ball, how many points does that expect to get you from what you do? And that's points on the scoreboard. For example, every time Buffalo snapped the ball, 0.12 in the positive column. It's okay. It's not crazy good. But the Steelers were incredibly bad. Minus 0.477. That is terrible. Plays per drive. Buffalo, 9.7 compared to 4.5. Yards per drive, 42.6 compared to 13.8. Rushing plays. Steelers only ran the ball 18 times against one of the league's worst run defenses. Now, I know they didn't run many plays. They have to run the ball more. I feel like I say this every week. One of the only ways to get out of this time of possession nightmare is run the ball more. 18 rush attempts. 50 for the Bills. 50 rushing attempts. And frankly, these numbers aren't as bad as you think. Yards before contact. 1.3 for these are run plays. 1.3 for the Steelers. 1.8 for the Bills. Yards after contact, 1.8 for the Steelers, 2.9 for the Bills. Yes, they favor the Bills. The Bills were a dominant rushing team, but it wasn't like, I don't know, 18 rushing attempts against the worst run defense. That makes me crazy. This part's not great. Missed tackles forced on run plays. Steelers ball carriers only had one missed tackle that they created. Buffalo had 12, which is a ton. I mentioned EPA before. If you just break it down per pass play, this is an easier way to understand it. This is why I tell you guys as opposed to the actual EPA. EPA per pass, Buffalo is in the 74th percentile. 99 is the best. Steelers were in the 3rd percentile. 3 out of 100, basically. They had a 42% completion rate in this game. I mean, we knew that the degree of passing for Pittsburgh was not going to be high. They were not driving deep ins over and over and over. There's still a lot of stuff at and behind the line of scrimmage and still only completed 42% of your passes. Now, depth of target. This is nuts. The Bills' depth of target, on average, every time Josh Allen threw the ball was only 1.8 yards past the line of scrimmage. Unbelievably low. Like lower than Rodgers on his most dink and dunk day or Ben's last year. Steelers were actually quite high, 6.9. There were more deeper shots. Now you're also losing at the end. And depth of target often correlates with time to throw. Rodgers was over 3 seconds. That's really late. Some of which, like the Bosa strip sack, scoop and score, is him I don't know, running is a bit of a stretch, moving around behind the pocket, whirly birding around, and his scramble or his buying time stuff to me has really gotten worse. But he was at 3.09, which is very high for him in a Steeler uniform. Rudolph wasn't out there much, but he was at 4.25, which is incredibly high. But Allen was only at 2.46. Now, some of this is just... And oh, by the way, that depth of target of 1.8 for Allen is in the 0th percentile. Like, I'm not even sure that that's a word. 0th, TH. Average depth of target. That's the lowest you'll ever see for a game. This average depth of target is 1.8 yards downfield. So it brings me to this conversation. Obviously, you couldn't stop the run. But your pass defense was actually kind of good. And those tackles, those backup tackles, it didn't matter if your pass defense was good. But those backup tackles didn't have to do anything in protection. Their receivers are bad. At some point, you have to realize, I know he's Josh Allen. He's the scariest human being on the planet to play defense against. But the ball's coming out at least as quick as the Herbert Charger parallel type game with worse weapons and at a shorter distance. And by this, I know they did try a lot of different things to stop the run. None of it worked, clearly. But like part of me, and I'm exaggerating, but put 10 guys in the box and just have Jalen Ramsey free safety it. I mean, at least make them throw, I guess, is my point. So there was things they were doing poorly or were doing in extreme fashion, and you couldn't take advantage of it. I guess is the best way for me to say that. Steelers even devised 4 unblocked pressures. I mean, that's scheming and blitz and things like that. Bills only had 1. But Watt, this was a tough game for TJ Watt, man. I mean, he only got 18 pass rush snaps, but he only had 1 pressure on those 18 snaps. He was chip blocked 4 out of 18 times. He was double teamed 3 out of 18 times. And his lone pressure came when he was left unblocked. Now, of course, a 0th percentile depth of target makes it tough to get pressures. No doubt. But I think it's safe to say that this was not a great game for TJ Watt. The Bills' best corner, Christian Benford, he was up against DK Metcalf on 13 of DK's 22 routes. And 10 of those 13 were man on man. It weren't just zones. And those 13 matchups, Metcalf was only targeted once, didn't catch the ball. Over the whole day, Benford was only targeted twice and didn't allow a reception, recorded an interception, and returned a fumble for a touchdown on the opening play of the second half. He's someone I should have talked about more, kind of, because mostly I talked about the Bills' defense. It's really bad, especially against the run, which I do believe. But he is a very good corner that is not well known. He'd be wonderful as a Steeler, but that is not the case. Some other stuff here to get into. I'm a big proponent of success rate. How often does an offense run a successful play? But the Steelers had an abysmal 33% success rate on offense. And their EPA per play across the entire offense was in the 2nd percentile. They were in the 2nd percentile on EPA per play on early downs. The early down stuff was particularly miserable. 4th percentile in EPA per dropback. I mean, just nothing on offense was good, particularly the early downs. I mean, through the first 3 quarters of the game, the Steelers only had 7 first downs and only 90 total yards of offense through 3 quarters of play. The Bills called a run play on 63.5% of their snaps, the 4th highest rate in a game since they drafted Josh Allen in 2018. And some of those games, they were winning by 1 million and just ran out the clock for the entire 4th quarter. Cook had a career-high 32 carries. That's also tied for most by a running back in the NFL this season. He forced 6 missed tackles, which was tied for his season high as well. He played great. Now, Steelers' run defense was terrible. We know that, but he is a great player. He played great. Routes run. Again, this goes back to they don't have a number 2 receiver, and they're really just. Is it Austin? Is it Wilson? Is it Wilson? Is it Austin? Austin ran 14 routes. Wilson ran 12. The answer is it's neither. Now, this bothers me, though. The tight end route distribution. Washington led the way with 20. You're never going to hear complaints from me of, there's too much Darnell Washington. I'm just never going to go there. Jonnu Smith ran 13, but Pat Freiermuth only ran 9. So a big thing I've been saying on the air today is I'm not implying that these two are Randy Moss and Rob Gronkowski, but I think your best two pass catchers, and we could fight about it, but I'm at least most of the way correct here, are DK Metcalf and I think Pat Freiermuth. And I think Steeler Nation vastly underestimates Pat Freiermuth. But we can just agree for a minute that they're your best two pass catchers. Freiermuth ran 9 routes. And Metcalf, who was always at the top of the league in average depth of target in Seattle, his average depth of target was well under 5 yards downfield. If they're your best two guys, you got to use them and you got to use them right. And they're not. Another bright spot was Isaac Seumalo. And actually, I think he's played quite well lately. I would be open to the idea of maybe giving him another extra 1 year on his contract. We'll talk about that stuff down the road, but it'd be nice not to have a guard need for a year, and Spencer Anderson could be that guy too. But Seumalo is quietly playing pretty good football right now. But what they did, and they did it in a variety of ways, but they got the Steelers in their nickel personnel, and they would put a lot of bodies to the right side of the offensive line. And they often through double teams, but in a variety of ways, they would kind of wash Watt down the line of scrimmage, and he didn't hold up great. And they often got their running back on the perimeter to the right side, one-on-one versus a corner. And Cook versus any corner is going to be a problem. But that's something you saw over and over. And the Steelers used different personnel to against their two tight end stuff. Both their tight ends are good blockers. Haas is a great blocker. But obviously it worked for one team, did not work for the other. The Bills' offense was also quite effective on later downs and did a good job, minus the 2 turnovers early. The Bills' offense did a very good job of not having negative plays. They were rarely in unfavorable down and distance situations. Eccles was another bright spot I found here. He was targeted 4 times, only allowed 1 catch. And he also had the interception. He was on Khalil Shakir, who's their best weapon for yesterday, and held him in check. So again, the pass defense was great. It was just, who cares? It wasn't even noticeable. And my last note I actually already mentioned was those 2 defensive linemen that were bottom of the roster players and should never be out there really in any circumstances and were forced to be, were really bad. I mean, may not be NFL players, period. Bad. So there wasn't a ton of snaps, but they went right at them and moved them all over the field. So that's me putting a bow on a very miserable Steeler loss. Over and out.